Welcome to tonight's edition of the One Hood Power Hour. I am your co-host, Kahari Mosley, here with my wonderful colleagues, Miracle Jones and Ryan White. And we have another incredible discussion this evening. We're going to be talking about um, issue that's been in the news for months and months now, and that's the conditions at the Allegheny County Jail. We have a number of folks from government to former employees to legal experts, as well as a former inmate to tell their stories and their perspective on what's going wrong and what's happening inside the walls of Allegheny County Jail and what we can do as citizens in Allegheny County to support the type of reforms that are needed to improve the conditions there. Um, but before we get to that, there's still so much to talk about. We got a lot going on. We had impeachment 2.0 this past week, and love to get your feedback. On what you thought. 57 senators voted in favor of conviction, which is the highest number in American history for an impeachment, but it did fall 10 short of the threshold needed to convict former President Trump of insurrection. So, Miracle, what are your thoughts now that we've had a couple of days to kind of decompress and think about the result and what are your thoughts on this President's Day of all days?
Of all right of all days. I think a lot of people were, of course, very disappointed with the process. There was a lot of information that people had wanted to learn with this impeachment trial that didn't happen because there weren't really any witnesses called. There was a vote to accept witnesses, and somehow that got approved. And then moments later, the Senate voted to then not have witnesses and to close the trial. And so, even though this was one of the most bipartisan votes when it came to impeachment, there's still a lot of unanswered questions about what did people know, when did they know it, what was the communication strategies going back and forth, and now we're basically in the same position as we were right after January 6th. That doesn't look like we're going to have the investigations, and it doesn't look like we're going to know what the president at the time knew and what his role was in the insurrection, the attempted insurrection that happened on the 6th. Ryan?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Miracle. Yeah, as you said, really disappointing that we weren't able to hear any of the witnesses, despite there being that vote to admit them. I gotta just assume that at that point, the Democrats and other senators looking to convict just knew that there was no chance that they were going to have the vote, and decided to cut their losses. I guess I can't really think of any other good faith reason to not call the witnesses at that point. But as you mentioned, just for the purpose of disclosure and transparency, and the public being able to have that information, if for nothing else, just to, consider in the future when, voting for people related to all this potentially. Yeah, I think it's really unfortunate that they didn't call the witnesses. I was honestly a little surprised that they actually even got 57 that voted to convict, because I believe the original vote to allow the trial to even happen was only 56 in favor of that.
Right.
So I was really expecting the number that actually voted to convict to fall more towards 52 or 53. But yeah, I mean, really the main takeaway from this is that there isn't one, because we didn't really, other than some of those videos, we didn't really learn anything super tangible that we weren't already aware of before the hearing. So yeah, disappointing in that regard.
Right. I did see Congressman Eric Swalwell from California, who's one of the House managers, and he said, today that, one of the reasons why they didn't move forward with witnesses and extend the trial, because they felt like, no matter what they did, they weren't going to reach the 67 threshold. And they felt like there was other business to get to, COVID and other issues, that they didn't want to, bog, the country down, with, an exercise, in futility, but then there is those who said, well, and actually, when it all started with, I think, 55. And then I think Congressman Cassidy, I believe, from Louisiana, then joined, and then I believe Senator Burr from North Carolina then joined as well. And there is a school of thought that if you did drag it out, and really lay out all the gory details, it could put, 5, 10, potentially more U.S. senators in a really tough spot, because clearly, one of the things that the senators that voted to acquit didn't want to do was sit around for weeks and hear just, evidence after evidence and detail after detail that just shows, really, how nefarious, the plot was. So, I think that, ultimately, history obviously will tell its own story, but I feel that the Republicans are probably glad that, they're moving on with legislative business and not, having to sit as a juror, and continue to have the trickle of details and facts come out.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny that that would be the excuse, because when President Clinton his impeachment was like over 30 days, right? And we were just trying to, and we colloquially as a country, we're just trying to figure out if he just misused his office for personal, encounters. And here we are looking at trying to figure out whether or not there is an ongoing threat to the safety and security of our nation, and whether there are people who are literally being encouraged through all levels of government, police officers, military personnel, to actually engage in a coup, have another insurrection later on, and somehow just a couple of days is all that people were willing to, quote unquote, sacrifice to get to the truth. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens next. It's going to be interesting if the lack of impeachment parlays into reduced charges or plea deals for the people who were at the Capitol, and if there is going to be a general immunity or forgiveness for everything that happens under the call for unity.
Right. Yeah, I mean, one thing before we get into our first, guest that I thought was interesting, directly related to what we just talked about, is that there's a lot of splintering in these white supremacist groups over the last couple of weeks, with the intense FBI investigations and scrutiny that has created a very paranoid environment within these organizations, where no one knows who's talking to federal law enforcement or who is federal law enforcement. So there's been viral videos where folks are calling out, other Proud Boys or other Oath Keepers and things like that, saying that person, is talking to federal agents and things like that. So it's really been interesting to see the impact of, that level of scrutiny and the investigations from federal law enforcement. And after years and years, I think, of intelligence organizations saying that these folks were a threat, finally, putting a focus on them, seems to have a damaging effect on the movement.
I mean, we don't have anything to do with it, but like Judas and the Black Messiah, right, just came out this weekend and talking about QuincelPro and how sometimes, government is putting people in these organizations to create chaos and cause harm. And so there is a verified reason that people have, distrust of the government. But at the same time, if these organizations are fearful of informants and have already exercised violence in the past, that doesn't make it. I think a lot of people now have cause for concern of what it looks like if these organizations, these people actually start fighting each other and going to war with each other, because a lot of us may be put in, the crosshairs as these people are literally physically fighting each other to prove who was more loyal to the past president.
Right. Right. And now segueing from national news to local news, and tonight's topic, we are going to be, again, discussing an issue that has been in the news a lot and been covered by every outlet in Western Pennsylvania, the issue of the variety of challenges the Allegheny County Jail is facing. And we have an incredible panel tonight, legal experts. We have a former inmate, we have a former employee, and we also have a government official who has been watching these issues closely. And I'm going to pass it to Ryan to introduce our first guest for tonight. So Ryan, would you do the pleasantries this evening?
Absolutely. Thanks, Kahari. So, as Kahari mentioned, all of our guests tonight are going to be here to speak about, a lot of the ongoing issues at the Allegheny County Jail, especially pertaining to medical and mental health care or the lack thereof in a lot of cases. And so our first guest tonight is Jacqueline Kieran, who is a staff attorney at the Abolitionist Law Center, and is, currently involved with and working on multiple lawsuits against the jail and county and other defendants, that are, seeking to remedy a lot of these issues with mental and medical health care at the jail.
Thank you so much for having me on this evening, and to, devoting part of your program to speak about this such an important topic. Not only this is an issue that affects not only the people who are, currently confined there, but their friends, our family, and this is our community. As Councilwoman Bethany Hallam has said many times, this is our jail, and we have to take account for it, including all those who are in there and the ramifications thereof. I think it's important to start when we talk about the Allegheny County Jail to talk about just go over a few underlying facts. And that helps us understand more of those underlying problems and even those issues at the jail and also within our community. So the first thing that many people are surprised to hear is to look at what are people actually being held at Allegheny County Jail for. The current population is a little bit under 1,600 people. And most of the people there who are being held there haven't been convicted of anything. In fact, 94%, I'm gonna say that again, 94% of the people who are at the Allegheny County Jail have not been sentenced for anything. People are being held on just being accused and maybe not have enough money for the bail or bond to get released, or they could be there on a probation detainer. They could be there for a technical violation, such as missing curfew. Or I've spoken with people who have, unfortunately, they were in alternative housing and couldn't get access to medical care there. And so they left to go to a hospital to get care. And then they got accused of escape to get medical care. And also, most of the people who are also being held there, only a very small fraction are being held there for some type accused of a violent offense. And when we're here in the time of COVID, and we know that incarcerated populations are much more vulnerable to serious illness and death in these types of congregate settings, we need to also be asking, why are these people being even held there in these conditions? And then for these accused charges. The next thing to kind of think about, aside from what people are being held there for, is who is being held there. And although in Allegheny County, only 13.4% of the population Black people make up of the population in the community, they are disproportionately represented at the Allegheny County Jail, up to about 67% of the people currently confined at the Allegheny County Jail are from the Black community. So there, in addition, this is one of those questions that we also have to be asking, not just in what's the problem at the Allegheny County Jail, also what are those issues in society that are leading to this. And then the next part of who's being held there is that about 70% of the population there has been diagnosed or a diagnosable mental health condition. Some people also refer to it as serious mental illness or even a psychiatric disability. It's also important to note that a good number of people who come into the Allegheny County Jail have also experienced a fair amount of trauma and even physical abuse in their lives. So we have people who are coming in who certainly are in need of both medical and mental health care, and then what is happening when they get to the Allegheny County Jail. And before going into those kinds of issues, it's absolutely crucial that we all recognize that everybody who is confined at the Allegheny County Jail, whether they've been convicted or not convicted of an offense, have rights. They have rights under the United States Constitution, and they have rights under federal laws, federal disability laws, such as the Americans with Disabilities Act and the Rehabilitation Act. And why is this also important? Well, it's really important when we start to talk about when you have a right to medical and mental health care, and whether that has to do with certain services, or maybe it's an assistive device. It could be your inhaler. It could be needing to see a specialist. It could be getting your medication that you got when someone was on the outside. You have rights to this medical and mental health treatment, and when you're not getting it, there could be really dramatic and just horrible ramifications from that. And unfortunately, Allegheny County Jail seems to excel in this area for many, many reasons. When we talk about just in the medical care side, that might not be getting your medicine. You might not be getting your medicine at the right time, or they might not refill their medicine. And one of the reasons that this is happening is the lack of adequate staffing and the adequate trained staff. There are certainly a good number of dedicated professionals who work at the Allegheny County Jail and who have worked at the Allegheny County Jail. You're going to hear from Mr. Charles Timbers, very dedicated former healthcare provider at the Allegheny County Jail who cared dearly for treating his patients. And so whenever we talk about problems or issues with the Allegheny County Jail, I don't want to cast aspersions on the entire population of the staff, because there are some people who really care about what's going on there. But just one of the big problems, as we've seen time and time again, goes back more to issues with the administration, who's in charge of making these decisions that have ramifications, whether on both what their staff can do and also, of course, affect what's happening to people who are incarcerated. And I think the other part to looking at this with the mental health care aspect is we've done depositions. The jail administrators have been on the record about this. There is no mental health care in terms of therapy or counseling at the jail. They don't provide it. They've given different reasons for why they don't provide it, but it's certainly our position, and how we've seen this happen in other correctional facilities around the country, that they have absolute duty to provide this, which even though they're failing short of doing this. And what happens when you're not getting your medicine? What happens when you're not getting your mental health care? People decompensate. Their mental health symptoms get worse. And one of the things that can also happen is people might act out, and the way that ACJ responds to that is they put people into solitary confinement. And of course, in solitary confinement, what is solitary confinement? That means that you might be denied one or more privileges. you're not having social interaction with other people. You're very lucky if you get that 1 hour that day, but they're inhumane conditions that people are subjected to. And one of the other parts to this is that people might be act out, they might decompensate. And the way that ACJ also responds to is not just putting people into solitary confinement, but it's also using force. And ACJ has to report its own use of force figures to state agencies every year. And when we say use of force, I mean physical assaults. I mean spraying people with OC. This is using a taser, putting people in a restraint chair where they're completely immobilized, strapped down. They're put in a room by themselves. They can't go to the bathroom. They can't, no food, no drink, no medicine. And it's a humiliating and a traumatizing experience. And just with some of those figures that went up, ACJ uses force far more than other proportionate jails in the state of Pennsylvania. For 2019, they were using force. They had 720 incidents of force. And that is double what we see at the other jails. We also see in terms of the restraint chair, they used it 339 times in 1 year. And when you compare that, so almost every day, and when you compare that to the 5 jails in Philadelphia, they didn't use it once. And it's across the board that we keep seeing these uses of force in response. And what's also mind-blowing to this is the use of force since 2015 has increased while the population of the jail has decreased. So that's why we're just so grateful for this opportunity, this platform to just start discussing, continue to discuss these issues. And for those of you who have friends or family or have formerly incarcerated in Allegheny County Jail, one of the best ways to let other people know about this and to try to make a change is also writing to or submitting public comments to the Jail Oversight Board, which is an independent body that's tasked to provide oversight, to investigate allegations, and to review certainly their policies and practices and make sure those conform, to both the regulations and to the United States Constitution.
Well, thank you for that. That was a lot of information that you gave us. We're very appreciative of it, and it's such a great segue, because our next guest is someone who participates in those jail oversight board meetings. Again, so thank you so much for joining us. And again, could you just let people know how to get in touch with you and how they can get involved with the work that you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, I work for the Abolitionist Law Center. It's a nonprofit prisoners' rights law firm here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. You can just type in Abolitionist Law Center on Facebook. You can tweet at us. You can go to our website and follow us on the blog. And thank you so much for just being able to talk about these issues tonight and also to meet your audience at large. So thank you so much for this opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you again for joining us again. And that's Jacqueline Kern from the Abolitionist Law Center, an attorney who provided us with a wealth of information about all of the mental health challenges and the health challenges that inmates in the Allegheny County Jail are facing, and also how Allegheny County Jail is really an outlier around the country when it comes to these issues. I think many of us look at jails and say, well, in jails, certain things happen. But, she gave us incredible wealth of information about, how Allegheny County Jail is an outlier on many of these issues. So now we'll be joined by Brad Karinsky, and he is a person I know very well. He is the counsel for the Allegheny County Controller's Office. For full disclosure, everyone knows our Allegheny County Controller. Chelsea Wagner is my wife, so Brad works for my wife, and I think he does a wonderful job. So I'll do the welcome, and I'll let Miracle and Ron ask the questions, so there's no conflicts of interest. There's no softballs that will get tossed up there. But I'd like to welcome to the One Hood Power Hour my good friend Brad Karinsky from the Allegheny County Controller's Office. Welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here. That's your wife. I had no idea. I've seen you in the same room, but I never knew. Yeah.
Awesome. So, Miracle, would you like to start with the first question?
Yes. So I think what a lot of people would like to know is what goes into regulating the Allegheny County Jail and who is responsible for regulating the jail, because we're hearing a lot of these allegations and the concerns that people have said for a minute about the conditions there. So who exactly is in charge?
Well, under Pennsylvania statute, the Jail Oversight Board does have oversight responsibility of the Allegheny County Jail. The Jail Oversight Board can conduct investigations of the jail. The Jail Oversight Board is statutorily obligated to conduct 2 inspections of the jail every year. And the Jail Oversight Board can conduct requests of records from the warden of both the warden's documents and the documents of any inmate. The Jail Oversight Board can also set policies and procedures for the Allegheny County Jail. So on paper, at least, the Jail Oversight Board can conduct oversight activities of the jail, and the people who sit on that board are statutorily responsible to conduct those duties. Has that always happened? I can tell you it hasn't. We used to have meetings that were 20 minutes long. Meetings routinely went from 4 o'clock to 4:25. For many, many years, the controller who sat on that board was in the decided minority in wanting that board to fulfill its statutory responsibilities. It's only been in the very recent memory that the jail board has gone longer than an hour. This past calendar year, Judge Kim Clark, the president judge of the Court of Common Pleas, became the chairperson of the Jail Oversight Board. We started to have subcommittees. We started to take our roles and responsibilities more seriously. So, it's true the Jail Oversight Board has responsibility. It can enact change, but as an institution, it still is slow going. Now, I don't think that's exactly the right answer, but as a practical matter, that's what's happening. It's growing as an institutional body. And I think anybody that's watched the meetings over the past 2 years could fairly say it's getting better. It's providing a forum, at least for people, that it's never been before. But as to who has responsibility for the jail, the county executive does. I mean, everything that we talk about with restraint chairs, with the way people aren't provided mental health care in the jail, if we talk about workplace conditions, any of those things, it's the county executive. The county executive could change the way the jail operates tomorrow with a phone call to the warden. So in some respects, the Jail Oversight Board is great, and it's an important institution. But I think a bait and switch can sometimes be pulled by saying, "Oh, look to the Jail Oversight Board every month to bring your complaints, because the Jail Oversight Board will take care of it," even though we know as a practical matter that won't really happen. And again, the warden reports to the county executive under our very strong executive subject of manner of government. So sorry to answer a easy question in a long way.
No, I appreciate you providing that insight, and how all that's, kind of developed and changed over time. And I just wanted to ask, because there have been reports in the past that the Allegheny County Jail has been, pretty restrictive and protective over what information they release, as far as, releasing their policies, as far as letting people actually come into the jail, and oversee the conditions and how everything is operating. So I just wanted to ask, how much access the Jail Oversight Board has into actually overseeing those operations, reading the policies and everything like that right now, and how that may have changed after a recent meeting that I believe was on February 4th, at which point I believe the warden changed what information he would be releasing.
Yeah, the warden, I probably never really understood what gaslighting meant until I started to attend Jail Oversight Board meetings. But I clearly under the statute, and you don't have to be a lawyer to be able to read the Jail Oversight Board statute, which would say the Jail Oversight Board gets all records of the jail, all the papers of the warden, and you ask for the policies and procedures of the jail. The warden initially responds with, well, I can't give you those policies and procedures, but they'll have to be in a redacted form. And then it turns out that we can see the policies and procedures, but we'd have to come to the jail. And then it turns out that we could see the policies and procedures perhaps in an undecided neutral place. So I really don't know why it is so difficult for the oversight board to get the policies and procedures. Now that being said, even if 9 laypersons had policies and procedures, that may or may not make a difference. So I don't really know what the big hang up is to just giving it to people so that we have it. And I think we've been open to, even for those policies that might implicate security or the protection of individuals in the institution, to enter into a consent order with the judges to say these would be for the eyes only of the board as to certain policies and procedures. But again, I've been affiliated with the board for 8 years. I have yet to see a full complement of the policies and procedures. And that's the same as I think anybody who's attended the past few meetings. We have begged and pleaded for records, incident reports, disciplinary reports, records related to the restraint chair. And again, these are reports that are being compiled. And we know they're being compiled because they're sent to the Department of Corrections each year. So we're not placing a additional administrative burden upon the jail. We would just like to really have the same information that they're compiling every day, that they send to the Department of Corrections, and that frankly public source gets. And I guess our best source of information really is public source, not the administration of the jail, which is a shame.
And I do hear you, and I do, again, thank you so much for coming on. But there is a frustration that people have, and I'll say, give a full disclaimer for trigger warnings, because we're talking about the conditions at the jail outside of the restraint here, the solitary confinement. Yeah. We're talking about trans people being housed in solitary confinement, being misgendered, put on the wrong pod. We're talking about multiple suicides. We're talking about allegations that there's no running water, there's no heat, people aren't being fed, and people don't have blankets, in addition to people not having access to COVID-19 testing. Of course, that was a vote that was, the board voted against to have. So there is a frustration that people have when they're trying to figure out where the policies and procedures are so that things can change. And the one Commonwealth appointed board themselves are saying that we ourselves don't have access to the information and essentially cannot make changes.
I I'm pretty frustrated as well. I think Controller Wagner's frustrated. I think Councilwoman Bethany Hallam's frustrated. I think you can see the frustration at the meetings. It's frustrating. I mean, it's difficult for me as a lawyer to, you're affiliated with the board. There's a state statute, and one wonders why are there, the 5 of the 6 things that the board can do? Why isn't the board doing all of them? That's the difficulty of developing the board as an institution. Now, can more public pressure be put on the board? Can we have more public comment? Can the elected officials be called to account? I think all of that needs to continue to be pushed.
And you said you've been on the board, you said roughly 8 years.
Yeah.
Do you know how many times there have been visits to the jail? And I understand with COVID-19, the jail is essentially on lockdown and you're not allowed to visit. Do you know how many times the board has visited and inspected the jail?
So we have advocated for these inspections to always happen. Rarely did we, and it's not even funny. I was gonna say it's funny you mentioned it, but it's really not funny. Under previous iterations of the Jail Oversight Board, the board thought that it was fulfilling its duty to conduct an inspection by holding meetings at the jail. We wouldn't inspect the jail, but we just have a meeting there on the first floor of the jail. We've been in the jail approximately 5 times. If Controller Wagner took office in 2012, I would say 5 to 6 times we have conducted inspections of the jail. Of those times, perhaps that's resulted in 2 to 3 written inspections. And under the previous chair of the board, even though we wanted to do written inspections, we were told not to do that. So, but even if inspections aren't happening, the board could still fulfill its function by demanding the records, by investigating, but because inspections, while it's something a board certainly should do, and we should do it every 6 months, we should even have random board members show up unannounced from time to time just to let people know that there are people in authority who care. It is very hard in a jail, particularly our jail, which is multi-leveled. It's controlled by elevators. By the time I get into the Sally, and I do believe we had truly unannounced inspections when I went in, but they were unannounced up until the time I got to the Sally port. I was in intake. I talked to people for 10 minutes, and then everyone knows. And I mean, you've been in the jail. By the time you get up to the 7th floor, your inspection, you might as well have sent everybody an invitation that you're going to come there. So inspections are, to some extent, of limited value, but it's a recognition by the board to the community that it has an important job to do under a statute and has to be done twice every year.
So you've mentioned a lot about just frustrations with not being able to get access to certain information, with not being able to get certain things done on the jail oversight board. You also mentioned that really all it would take for a lot of these things to be accomplished would be, a phone call from the county executive to the warden. And, the county executive is a member on the jail oversight board. So if you could just speak a little bit about, that seeming contradiction of him being the person that's, able to affect a lot of this change and being on the board, yet the board's still not being able to, accomplish a lot of those things. And, just speak to his involvement with the board.
Right. But because it is somewhat of a strange situation that we're on a board where the most powerful person in the county is a member of the board, and we are begging that person's department for information. We have to wait multiple months when, in fact, if the person who's a board member would simply say, I want you to give them the information, it's done. The county executive's role, how shall I say, in the board has not been robust. I've not seen the county executive attend a jail oversight board meeting since I've been affiliated with the board, although I imagine perhaps one time in 8 to 10 years he has. At least in recent memory, he has not. If you look at the statute says that the county executive shall attend the jail oversight board meetings. That's different than, say, the similar provision in the statute that says it's the county council president or his or her designee, which is how Councilwoman Hallam ends up being the representative, and thankfully so. But instead, the county executive has delegated his responsibility to sit on the board to Barbara Parise, a fine woman, a fine public servant, but she's currently a retired county employee. So again, I don't think that you would find another county affiliated board, certainly one that has the important statutory duties that the jail oversight board has, where the county executive would delegate his responsibilities to a retired employee. So I think that speaks volumes to how important this is to the county executive, and perhaps is one reason, and I think a chief reason for the dysfunction that we have on the board. Because if the most important person in the county were to attend the board, it suddenly, to his subordinates, becomes a pretty important board. I mean, I think that's, to any walk of life, if your boss is now on the board, it's really important. If your boss sends someone who's not even a county employee, I don't think you'd regard it as important, and perhaps you shouldn't, because it doesn't seem very important to your boss.
Yeah, and as we wrap up, what in your experience is like the biggest barrier? Is it the fact that the jail's so massive? Is it because we're dealing with people who are accused of crimes at the jail? What is, from your experience, the reason that there seems to be this stalemate? Because I would think that, like, if I'm being sued multiple times for something and I'm actually now costing people money, resources, lives, I'm going to kind of show up for work and do the best that I can to get the situation under control. But it seems that every single vote that's happening is essentially allowing more chaos and harm at the jail. And I understand there's like only like 4 people who've really been pushing, and we need more people appointed to the board. But from your experience, what is the disconnect from the other voting members to actually take the conditions at the jail more seriously?
Well, I guess number one, no one's ever really paid a political cost for conditions at the jail. I think two, in terms of a financial cost, even though there have been lawsuits, have there been any big settlements at the jail? I can't say that there have been. For my position in the controller's office, and I see the money that goes out, we've not really paid 6-figure settlements that gets people's attention. We have a big county. We have a big budget. So 30,000 here and 50,000 there really doesn't impact the bottom line, unfortunately. And again, I think it is hard for people who are on the jail oversight board who get appointed. They are citizen representatives. It is a lot to take in. It's a big responsibility. They feel like they do not have a sufficient knowledge base, and they don't feel like they have a lot of support. And again, I think that could begin with the county by taking the jail oversight board seriously and it's hard for take a regular citizen representative. You're there for one meeting a month, and you have to fight for everything against the warden who's going to deny this. He's going to be technical with this request. And it's just hard. It's difficult for people to get the mentality of a controller, Wagner, or a council person, Hallam, and just get in there and fight in a public venue. People aren't used to doing it. People are used to serving on boards, and certainly if you're on the Port Authority board and you ask for information as to why our buses keep breaking down, okay, Mr. Smith, here's the records. I mean, other people have watched boards. You don't have to fight with the executive director of the Airport Authority for this, or of Port Authority. So it really is daunting to be put on a board and then have to fight for every inch of ground to get necessary information.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you again for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it. You providing your insight on this overarching issue from the perspective of somebody who attends those jail oversight board meetings. So yeah, thanks a lot for joining us again tonight. Really appreciate it.
No, and thank you. And the abolitionists do great work. And just to everybody, keep the public comments coming. Things are getting better on the board. I'm as frustrated as you are, but institutionally, that change does take some time. So thanks for keeping some faith with us. So thank you.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you.
And I think Ryan will probably announce this again. We did actually reach out to the warden, to invite him on the show so he could, defend his record and explain the support and resources that he needs to ensure these complaints are, met. And we didn't get a response back.
He could have pulled a Rich Fitzgerald and sent a retired employee as a representative. He could have. I offered to take a written statement, but yeah, no response there.
So yeah, I think, and the reason we bring that up is because, again, we're hosting these shows so that people can talk directly to the decision makers and ask questions. We're not here to attack folks. We're here to get answers so we can stop these harms and abuses from occurring. And if there's something that we don't know that people need, the way we find that out is to ask them. And unfortunately, neither he or any of his representatives came on the show to talk to you all this evening.
Absolutely, and I can attest to the frustration that was mentioned. I know the word frustration came up a few times, and I can attest that when my wife, in pre-COVID, when she would come back from jail oversight board meetings, and most recently when she comes out of a Zoom meeting from the jail oversight board, there's definitely a lot of frustration that she brings into the next conversation that we have. So as an eyewitness, I can speak to the frustration that those who are fighting for people inside the jail and trying to get things right there. Definitely a lot of energy, probably a lot of unnecessary energy spent, to try to get the right thing done.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And continuing on our theme of, frustration at trying to get the right thing done, we have Charles Timbers Jr. joining us now. And he is a former healthcare provider at Allegheny County Jail who has been, very vocal about a lot of the issues surrounding, insufficient and inadequate care for as far as medical and mental health care. So thank you for joining us tonight.
Glad to be here.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us. And we understand that you're a former healthcare provider. Can you talk a little bit about your role, while you were at the Allegheny County Jail, and then in the aspects of what you saw in your service?
I was a provider or nurse practitioner at the Allegheny County Jail. I actually worked at the Allegheny County Jail in the 90s, went back in the early 2000s under a different administration, and returned in October of 2017 under this current administration. Some of the things that I had noticed, the lack of care of the inmates as far as medical and mental health, it had changed since the previous administrations. Myself, along with another nurse practitioner, we had complained about conditions. There's a lot of micromanaging at Allegheny County Jail. We as providers, we have the medical background, the medical knowledge, but we don't have the ability to make certain decisions. Sometimes if an inmate is really ill and we feel that inmate needs to go out, it's like you have to go through all this red tape to send the inmate out. And most of the time, the deputy warden intervenes, and she has no medical background, no degree in medicine, but sometimes she makes decisions that we feel that she should not be making. Some of the things that I've seen, mismedications, you report it, there's never any repercussions, and you've seen that in the paper. Some of the doctors have even discussed that. Unfortunately, I think one of the main problems is lack of staff. The nurses can't do an efficient job on a skeleton crew. If I was administration or in county administration and I've seen most of my employees exiting, I want to know why. Something must be wrong that the nurses do not stay there. They have a hostile work environment, in particular with particular nursing supervisors. They are passing medications from multiple pods, and that's a lot of inmates. And just one nurse passing all those medications, they pre-pour their medication, which can increase mistakes. I've seen inmates receive wrong medications. I've seen inmates not receive their medications at all the entire day, but nothing's ever done, even if you complain about it. As a result of that, there have been inmates that have suffered some serious consequences, and the conditions are just very bad. Myself and a nurse practitioner by the name of Jody Lynn, we were mainly the ones that were trying to bring attention to the Allegheny County Jail, but initially nobody seemed to want to listen to us. But then when all the articles started surfacing from the public source and comments of former employees, they seen that we were telling the truth. Everybody can't be lying. It is bad. It is bad. From the intake area, patients come in, sitting down in the intake without their medications, and particularly patients with mental health conditions. They come into the jail. They're on medications prior to coming to the jail, but those medications are stopped once they get in the jail, and then it's like you have to take a number you might not be seeing for a week or maybe a month before those medications are restarted. And what happens as a result of that? They decompensate. So when they decompensate, what does the jail do? They label them as a behavioral problem, either send them up to segregation or they put them in restraint chair. That's no way to, when you look at the population of the jail, there's a large percentage of individuals that have mental health problems, but they don't get the actual mental health care that they should get, as if they were out in the public. Some of the things that go on in there, if it was in a regular hospital, the hospital would be shut down. The warden tried to use at the last oversight board meeting, he was blaming a lot of things on the pandemic, but these things were going on before the pandemic. So what is the answer? I don't have an answer. The unfortunate thing is the inmates are suffering daily, and there's a lot of things that people don't know that goes on in the jail. I mean, I had suggested to one of the members of the oversight board, if you do an inspection, don't announce your inspection. Make a spot inspection where you're not announced, where they don't have a chance to clean things up, like how filthy the intake area is. The kitchen, this is in my opinion, and some other, it's disgusting. I wouldn't feed my dog off of some of the utensils that they use to serve the food on. If you walk down to the kitchen and you would walk through there, you just shake your head. There was an incident where there was an inmate that had come to the clinic 3 or 4 times on various days complaining of signs and symptoms that I felt were pretty serious. Eventually, I was able to go through the red tape and send this inmate out. And believe it or not, this inmate had open heart surgery the following day. He credits me for saving his life. There was an inmate, unfortunately, that would make rounds on the pods, missed his medication, missed his antibiotics, missed having his dressing changed on a wound, complained about it. Unfortunately, nothing was done about it. The nurses just never had time to go up and change his dressing like they should have, like at least twice a day. As a result, this inmate lost his leg. These are things that the public don't hear about.
Yeah. Thank you so much for providing all that information. A lot of former, and even some current anonymous mental and medical health staff at the jail have been really outspoken about that, and it's really important to get that, that firsthand perspective. So thank you for providing that. And I wanted to talk again about, something you mentioned. It's something that Jacqueline spoke about as well, and that's just the massive issues with mental and medical health staff shortage at the jail. Jacqueline just mentioned in the chat that 40% of the healthcare positions at the jail are vacant right now, which is a ridiculous percentage. And you mentioned that the warden Harper, Deputy Warden Williams, a lot of the current administration have cited the pandemic for being the root cause of a lot of these issues. But I've seen you and a lot of the other former mental and medical health staff that have left, really dispute those claims and say, that it was the product of a lot of other things, like the head of the administration, they're not having a medical background and wanting to override a lot of the recommendations of the medical and mental health staff. So I just wanted to get your input on how much of an impact not having administration with a medical background, or that's at least willing to listen to the staff that does have medical backgrounds, how impactful that's been on the issues with hiring and retaining medical and mental health staff.
I believe if they had someone with a medical background, some medical knowledge, and some insight as far as medical conditions, would improve some of the outcomes at the jail. But you have individuals down there that don't have that are in administration that don't have a medical background. I believe somebody down there has a degree in drug and alcohol counseling. Currently, you don't have anybody with a psychiatric background heading the psychiatry department because Dr. Barfield is on. And you have some psychiatrists that come through there, but they don't seem to last very long because of the micromanagement and the inefficient care that the inmates are receiving. I believe that what the need to do is recruit individuals with a solid background in medicine or psychiatry to head up those departments instead of somebody with a PhD behind their name, a PhD in maybe drug or alcohol counseling, not psychiatry. The medical department, the head of the medical department, the gentleman that runs the medical department currently, he's a very good doctor. He's very pro inmate care. he goes above and beyond, but he meets roadblocks because he has to deal with administration, such as the deputy warden, when we want to send somebody out, trying to justify sending somebody out instead of going on our knowledge, knowing that, we know what we're talking about. I don't know whether it's cost containment. The jail is not equipped to handle certain conditions, and patients need to go out for medical problems. There was a gentleman that had such severe cataracts that the ophthalmologist recommended that he has cataract surgery. Now, the gentleman, he was afraid for his safety because when you have severe cataracts, you can barely see. And when you're up on the pods, there is a danger. They kept denying him and denying him and denying him. And the excuse they used was, well, this is an elective procedure. So he served his whole time. He was down there on a detainer and was there for I don't know how many months, close to a year. Finally, I seen him out in the public, and finally got his cataracts taken care of. You have a nursing supervisor down there also that she's very hostile. A lot of staff leave because of her. The way she speaks to them, I've seen nurses cry like babies. These are grown women. She degrades them, and she tries with the medical providers, trying to override their decisions. And then she calls the deputy warden, and the deputy warden intervenes, and sometimes we get our way, and sometimes we don't. They just need to hire somebody with a medical background. There's a situation right now, I don't know whether Jackie had talked about it, where there is unnecessary retaliation against inmates. And that's wrong. Yeah, a particular inmate down there that's been in the jail for almost 6 years. Court cases going round and round, and he's been up on segregation for almost 3 years straight. And then when he decompensates, what do? They take him down to a mental health unit, then take him right back up to segregation, where he's sitting in that 2x4 room with no stimulation, especially now during the pandemic. They don't even get a chance to watch TV. He doesn't have a tablet, doesn't have phone privilege, doesn't even have commissary. And they wonder why he's decompensating.
Right. And can you talk about a little bit about your experience when you spoke out?
Oh, well, my experience when I spoke out about certain issues, well, I lost my job at the jail because I confront the deputy warden about a method they were using, screening employees coming in and out of the jail during the COVID crisis. And she didn't like that very much. Matter of fact, the very next day after me and her had this conversation in a meeting where there were witnesses, she called me up and told me that my security clearance had been revoked because I violated their social media policy. I don't even understand what she was talking about. I never said anything negative about the job. I was interviewed because I had coronavirus. And so I lost my job down there. But when I would speak out against certain things, I was looked at as a troublemaker. I was an advocate for the inmates. Myself and another nurse practitioner. But nothing was ever done about any of the complaints that we had set forward. I mean, there's written documentation where we had complained, but nothing was ever done. When I went up and spoke to the nursing administrator about patients receiving wrong medications, nothing was ever done. When I spoke to the administrator about patients not receiving their medications the entire day, and I have correctional officers that can collaborate that because I asked them that the medication errors come to the body. No, but what is very interesting is when I went up to check the patient's charts, it was documented that the medication was given. That's falsification of records. I brought that to the deputy warden. There were never any repercussions. anytime you complain, it seems like it falls on a deaf ear, and nobody ever does anything. Now, I would still be in jail with that incident, but a lot of nurses have left, and you've seen their statements in the newspapers. Hostile working conditions, they're overworked. It's just bad. It's just bad. The warden tried to compare the Allegheny County Jail with the federal prison. Why is it any different? You know, the human health services administrator that came on staff, she lasted 3 months. 3 months. And she was gone because of micromanagement. They wouldn't let her do her job. She was trying to straighten the place up. That was her job all around the country, but she didn't last 3 months. The psychiatrists that don't last. What is the answer?
I was gonna say, I believe David Sachs, who was brought on in the mental health department, I believe, if I'm correct about that, last not even a month from what I saw in one of the public sources.
I think it was
before he left. Yep, 3 weeks. Yeah.
Right.
So that's, again, really the really troubling trend that we've seen over the last several months of a lot of really qualified, really professional, experienced mental and medical health staff, no longer working at the jail for a lot of those administrative reasons that we talked about.
But why doesn't upper administration look at that and say something is wrong? And particularly now, the warden answers to Rich Fitzgerald, but from what I understand, he doesn't even attend any of the jail oversight board meetings. But it's not a requirement. I was interviewed earlier today, and they did some research, and it is not a requirement for him to attend. He can send a representative, but I believe the representative he sends is somebody is retired.
Yep, we were talking about that. Yeah, we had Brad from the Brad Karinsky, who attends those meetings on just before, and he was talking about that exactly. Yep, he sends a retired employee to attend those as a representative of him at those meetings. So yep, that's absolutely correct.
I mean, it seems like such an easy fix if someone would just step forward, take the initiative to fix it. The warden's going to try to cover. I'm not saying anything negative against the warden, but there's certain people in the administration that need to be changed. And until that's done, I don't think there's going to be any change coming to the Allegheny County Jail.
Yeah. Miracle, did you have what? Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
No, sorry. Go ahead, Kahari.
No, I thought Miracle might have had something.
Yeah, I know, like, for me, from my experience, I was just shocked at the fact that there is no mental health treatments in the jail, that there's not even a system set up to get diagnoses in the jail. So when you're talking about sending people out, you're really talking that people have to leave the jail to get basic medical treatment, which could also be one of the underlying reasons why they're in the jail in the first place. So it's very disheartening, but you're talking about, what I would say, medical malpractice, medical malfeasance. So is there any type of reporting board outside of the jail that people are able to report to? Because I'm thinking of like the Hippocratic Oath that medical providers are supposed to follow. So are there any type of boards, statewide, nationally, that can be contacted to investigate the jail at all?
Well, there is I don't know whether it's a board, but they have a correctional health care organization that comes around and inspects the jails. But when that happened, was it last year, year before last, they prepared because it's announced. Just like with the Joint Commission for Hospital Accreditation, they know far in advance when these people are coming, so they clean up their acts. And that's the same thing that happened at the jail. They made sure everything was the way it should be when they have these inspections. People complain. I don't know whether the jail is governed by any type of medical, which it should be. I'm not sure whether it's governed by any type of medical organization as far as medical malpractice. I know a lot of nurses left because they were concerned about their license.
Yeah, just to chime in on that real quick. Jacqueline also just said that, you know, anybody who's concerned about this can also file a complaint with the medical board. So I guess that would be, you know, the body that's responsible for overseeing that at the jail and could go investigate that.
It makes you wonder whether people are really concerned because they're inmates. You know, it makes me wonder because they're inmates that nobody really cares. Nobody really gives a darn. And that's sad. I mean, they're human beings. You know, those individuals that are in the medical profession, we took an oath, a Hippocratic oath, and we're supposed to provide the best medical treatment that we possibly can with the resources that we have. And the staff tries, but it's just, they run into so many roadblocks and obstacles. You know, I used to get in arguments with people because I was concerned. I'd make my rounds on the pod. The inmates knew the providers that they can go to, and they would come up and give us the complaints, and I'd go upstairs and I'd say, this inmate said this, and I'd do some investigation, and what the inmate stated was true. And then I would be told it'll be taken care of, but nothing's ever done. I believe with the media attention and people keep pressuring and putting a spotlight on the Allegheny County Jail, maybe eventually something will be done. I encourage families to write Rich Fitzgerald's office. Continue to reach out to the media. Continue to put the pressure on the Allegheny County Jail, and perhaps change will eventually come.
Wow. Charles Timbers, nurse practitioner, former nurse practitioner at the Allegheny County Jail, sharing this incredible story about what's really happening, inside those doors. Thank you so much for your service. Even under the best of circumstances, I'm sure that's a challenging occupation, but given the obstacles and challenges, I can imagine, how tough it is and why so many dedicated healthcare folks in the healthcare industry are not able to commit themselves to long-term employment at the Allegheny County Jail. So again, thank you for everything you do, and thank you for continuing to shine the light, on this issue that needs a light shined on it. So again, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to continuing this conversation in the future. Again, Charles Timbers Jr., also a very talented actor. For those who had the opportunity to see him, I've had an opportunity to see him act live on stage a number of August Wilson plays. So also, a great artist in his own right as well. So I want to thank him from joining us. So I'm going to pass the baton to my colleague Miracle to introduce our final guest for tonight. And I want to thank everyone who has stayed with us, for the hour plus. And then please stay and listen to this our last guest, who's going to give, a very, very firsthand account of what goes on. But I'm going to pass it over to Miracle to introduce our final guest for the evening.
Yes. And so again, I'll give a full trigger warning as we bring on the next guest, Kimberly Andrews, who many of you may know through the the public source article, but also some of the work at the Abolitionist Law Center. Kimberly was an individual who was a survivor of the Allegheny County Jail, the restraint chair, the solitary confinement, the lack of medical care, the harassment, it's really just an abject failure to protect people while they were incarcerated. And Kimberly is someone who has survived, unfortunately, these systems and have been failed by these systems to get adequate care, physical care, and mental care, and actually spent a birthday in solitary confinement. And so to talk about her experiences and to encourage people to get more involved, we welcome Kimberly to the program. So welcome, Kim.
Hi.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. First, I want to start off by thanking everybody for allowing me to have this opportunity to come and speak out, because not everybody gets this opportunity to speak out about what goes on in Allegheny County Jail and what goes on with the higher ups in Allegheny County Jail. And it's just a blessing, honestly. So do I just?
Yeah, you could. Yeah, you can share your story with us, please.
First time in Allegheny County Jail, I was 18 years old. Basically, I was in there for misdemeanors, and my first time in Allegheny County Jail, I was placed on a regular pod 4F, where you go. It's a female's pod where you go to get I forget what it's called. I don't know what it's called. Basically, you get I forget what it's called, but they find out your pod, your level, your status.
Right.
Like the intake thing?
Yes. I was on that pod for a day and a half, 2 days, without getting out of my cell at all. No phone calls, no inmate orientation, nothing. I was harassed. I was talked bad to. I couldn't get grievances. I asked questions because I didn't know what was going on, and I was pretty young. So I end up having a severe panic attack, and I told them that I couldn't breathe. I have asthma. I couldn't breathe. Basically, I was told that I'm fine. And then my cellmate, hit the call button, and basically it's like, she can't breathe and someone needs to do something. I was told that I was threatened. I was told that if I go up to medical and there's nothing wrong with me, I'm going to the hole. At that time, I didn't know what solitary confinement was, the hole was. So when I went to the medical department, I just broke down and had a huge panic attack. The doctor came out and basically is like, what's wrong? Checking me out or whatever. And I told them I wasn't receiving any of my medication when I was on 4F. So they instantly moved me to the mental health pod. I wasn't receiving my medication. I was getting harassed, talked real crazy to. I stayed there for a while. I ended up going back a couple times to Allegheny County Jail. What I endured in Allegheny County Jail, what I've seen other people endure in Allegheny County Jail, just on the mental health pod, which is 5MD, is absurd. It's cruel. Tased. I've been tased. I've been maced. I've been stripped down with no clothes, placed in a restraint chair. I've been, and when you're in, first, I want to get on the restraint chair. When you're in the restraint chair, anytime that I've been put in the restraint chair was because I've asked for help, was because I was having a mental health crisis, or I was feeling some type of way about not receiving medication, or I needed to talk to somebody. And that was the reaction. That was their way of dealing with that situation. That was how they deal with things. I've been put in a chair to where 8 hours and over, no food, no medication, no bathroom, no anything, no contact with anybody. You're strapped down. You can't do anything. You have a mask over your head. It's called a spit guard, regardless if you're spitting, being physical or nothing. They put a mask over your head so you can't really see nothing. Can't really see when the staff walks past to ask, hey, I need this or I need help or anything like that. It's just like, I don't even know where to begin. Like, I just wish that people weren't so cruel in the Allegheny County Jail, that the higher ups, such as Warden Harper and Deputy Warden Williams, I wish that people like those people, even I forget his name. But he's specifically on the mental health part. Like, he's the overseer of the medical people. But people like that oversees things, definitely mental health, I wish that they would do things that will help instead of harm. Because at this point, the jail is a harmful place. It's not safe for anybody. It's not safe for the inmates. It's not safe for the staffing. It's not safe, period. And without a safe environment, like, how is it running? How is it running? There's been times where I've gone without eating for weeks because of things being in my food, and nobody doing anything about it. And I'm not talking about a piece of hair here and there. You know, people, that happens sometimes. I'm talking about pebbles, rocks from outside, scraps of metal, things like that. There's been times where it's just horrific. And I was placed in solitary confinement, and it was devastating. Like, I really felt like I was literally going to lose my mind. I had, while I was in jail, at least 4 or 5 suicide attempts where I had to be rushed. Where I had to be rushed to the hospital, and I had to be taken to the hospital and treated. It was traumatic. It's just something that nobody should have to go through. It's something that is cruel and unusual. And I don't know. I just think that I'm doing this. I'm speaking out. I'm doing all of this because I want nobody else to have to go through that. The use of force is ridiculous. The way that it's like people aren't trained to deal with mental health disabilities. Just on 5MD regularly, like what I see from what I've seen and been through, their first response is physical, like to get physical with you. Like, you ask questions that's refusing a direct order, and they'll get physical with you. They'll bring the CERT team up. They'll mace you, tase you, use a Nova. They'll cut your clothes off for no reason. They'll do things to basically gain control and power over you for no reason. And they'll humiliate you. They'll sit you in a chair for hours. For hours. There's been times I sat in that chair for hours and I would hear other people coming down in different chairs in different rooms, and you could hear the people screaming, shouting, and I would hear some of the males that would go in the chair, and I would hear them say, "Come on," like begging, "Just come on, please. Let me go to the bathroom. Why are y'all doing this to me?" Like, that's humiliating and dehumanizing. To sit you next, bolt you down, and strap you down next to a toilet that you cannot use. To deprive you of meals when you already don't get that much in Allegheny County Jail, period. To deprive you of medication, but then when you get out the chair, you've been unmedicated for 8+ hours. So then you're not right in the head and you're going right back in the chair. Now you're in the chair for 16 hours. Now you're in the it adds up and adds up and adds up. And it's just wrong. And honestly, I've face-to-face had conversations with the Warden Harper. I had conversations with Deputy Williams, and honestly, their lack of care is ridiculous. To me, if you can't care about another human's life, another human's well-being, you cannot run a facility like that. You can't. Why am people, things that people are alleged convicted of, alleged like they're waiting to be seen by a judge for, and like Jackie said, like most people are in jail on petty detainers, petty checks, or can't pay bail for a misdemeanor charge. People like that, people are going to jail for petty things, and they're being mistreated, they're being tortured, they're being made to be victims, they're being traumatized in the Allegheny County Jail for something so little. And nobody should have to deal with that. Nobody should have to not hear from their families for months at a time because they're locked in a single cell, barely getting showers. You only in the hole, you only get 3 showers a week, and you only get 1 hour of rec. That's the policy. That's what you're supposed to get. When I was in the hole, I barely got out for rec until somebody spoke up for me, and they made it to where I was allowed to do that. But for that's what happens in Allegheny County Jail. They don't act until it's too late. They don't act until somebody done hung themselves. They don't act until somebody is dead. They don't act until somebody is severely hurt. They don't act until there's articles everywhere. They don't act until there's lawsuits. But why does it take all of that to just care about somebody's well-being? That's all I'm asking. I'm asking for you to do the right thing by somebody. I'm not asking, I was never asking for anything. I don't think anybody's asking the warden for much other than to speak up. What you said about you guys inviting him here to speak and to put his part of the story out, and the fact that he's like that. I have spoken with that man face to face. He's very illiterate, and he's like that. He will sit there and look at you and just act like nothing's wrong. You will bring something genuinely serious and very important to him, and he will sit there and act like you didn't just say what you just said. And that's the man that has all of our lives in his hand. That's the man that oversees the operation of the jail. And that's exactly why there's so much suicide. The suicide rate is going up in the Allegheny County Jail. Solitary confinement rate up. Use of force rate up, because the staffing there and everybody will follow the leader, period. And if your leader is the person that's the boss, is telling you, and some people don't like Dr. Charles, he or Charlie, excuse me if I got his name wrong, but I've talked to him a couple of times when I was in a hole. He checked me out when I wasn't eating before, when I was in a hole. And you just know when somebody cares, and when you just know when somebody doesn't. And I feel like some of the staffing there are forced to do what's not right because of the wardens, under the warden's orders, under the warden's hands, and because of the people that oversee them. And that's not right, because people's lives are in danger. And what I'm scared of, honestly, what I fear is that somebody like me, I survived it. Every suicide attempt I had, I survived. Some were worse than others, but I survived. I got out. I'm doing very good out here. 2 jobs, apartment. Like, I'm doing really good. And I'm speaking up and speaking out. Any chance I get to tell my story, to tell somebody else's story, to advocate for somebody, I'm doing, because just because I was strong enough to survive it, because people came to me to help me and found me. What if the abolitionist law center never found me? I don't know where I would be, dead. My mom and my siblings, 7 siblings, have to attend a funeral for their loved one because of Allegheny County Jail does not have the necessary policies, does not have the necessary trainings, do not have the necessary equipment and the necessary things to help the mentally disabled in their jail. And instead, they abuse them and expect them to be okay like that. That's not okay. It's not okay. And it's sickening. And it's not easy. I survived it, but it's not easy. Every day, sometimes it's very, it makes me paranoid. When every day when I'm walking down the street or something like that, I just think certain things I see, smell, it brings me back. Sometimes I feel like somebody's just gonna run in here. I could be in my house at night and hear something, and I feel like somebody's gonna run in here and strap me to a chair, or strip me down, or lock me away to where I have no contact. Like, it's very hard to get over things that happen to you in Allegheny County Jail. Somebody could come into Allegheny County Jail very sane and put together and leave disturbed, battered, and traumatized. That's the word for it. The jail is cruel. If I had 3 words to describe what happens in the jail, because honestly, it can be ran right. It can be ran right. Nobody's asking to just stop everything and just throw the whole jail away. Nobody's asking that. That's impossible. But what I feel like me and some of the inmates that I know and talk to that got outside and that are working with the Abolitionist Law Center is we're asking to be treated like human beings. Number one, we're asking to have proper medical care. We're asking to have proper mental health care. We're asking to not have to go into jail and because you ask a question or ask a question to like to wonder, well, why are you asking me to do this, or what is this? Why am I doing this? That somebody's going to write up a false infraction and send you to the hole for 90 days, or for 60 days, or for 170 days. It's bad, and it needs to get better. It needs to get better. Like, I do this because not only because of me, but because I witnessed people with severe, like, to the point like they're not even there. Like, I could comprehend things that I have problems, but them, like, I witnessed people that I couldn't even talk by themselves or couldn't comprehend things.
I think we may have lost Kimberly. Yeah, but that was very powerful. Hopefully we can get her back. We may have just lost the signal, but wow, I mean, what more can you say? With that kind of testimony and providing that kind of firsthand account, of what really goes on. I think sometimes, when we're, kind of detached from these situations, I think it's hard for us to really, wrap our heads around, the type of treatment that folks get, particularly in situations where, people are empowered and they feel like people are watching. We see this, this phenomenon, not only here in this country, but around the world. But it really seems like, what we're dealing with is a situation where, there's feeling like there's not going to be that level of scrutiny, because of, we're dealing with the jail, we're dealing with people who may or may not have broken the law. And I think that there's just that certain, view that, oh, well, who cares about these people? We can do, whatever we want. I think why it's so important, that we, lift up these stories and shine the light, on these situations, so that we can lift up the humanity, of these people. Because regardless of what you've done, and we know, even from my own personal experience with me and my wife, that, we know how, the criminal justice system works, in a very unfair way, and can throw a whole bunch of charges, that, eventually will be, proven to be dubious at best, knowing that, putting the onus on people to have the resources to defend themselves. And we know that county jail is full of a lot of people that do not have that kind of financial wherewithal to stand up. So then you're in the county jail for months, on a detainer. You're in these situations, because there's this feeling that, no one's going to come and fight for these people. And I think that's why it's so important, that we do, fight for these folks and show people that we are watching, that we are paying attention, because, what they say, the best disinfectant to corruption is sunlight. We need to shine more light. We need more Kimberlys, and we need to figure out how to get more of these stories out, and continue to lift up the work that the Abolitionist Law Center does, as well. Jacqueline and all the fabulous, work that she's doing, as well as helping us, giving us some notes and stuff like that, because she has such a deep understanding, of this issue and some of the actual people, the actual real people, who have faced, these atrocities. And I think we can comfortably call these atrocities, without any hyperbole. But Miracle, is there anything you want to say?
Yeah, and of course, being in a global pandemic makes this so much worse. But and I think people need to really understand, particularly with like the mental health issue, is that you have people who are sick, who are having issues out in the community for various reasons, are taken into the jail, and their medication is stopped. there's no guarantee that they're going to be put back on the same cocktail of maintenance medication that works for them. There may not be a contract with the drug company at the jail. So a lot of times when people are responding to being in captivity and having a mental health crisis, because you have people who are not trained to deal with people and mental health, because you have people who are not medical providers making decisions, you're getting situations where people are essentially being tortured because the jail staff does not know how to properly care. And as Angela Davis reminds us, jails and prisons do not disappear problems, they disappear people. And it's very important that you join organizations like the ALC Court Watch, the Abolitionist Law Center, the Pennsylvania Legal Society, the Pennsylvania Prison Society, all these organizations that are visiting and communicating with people in jail. I personally have friends and loved ones who are incarcerated right now, and it's taking weeks to get letters in mail. If tech goes down, you can't call or hear from people for days and weeks at a time. So a lot of things we really do not know what's going on in these prisons and jails because people are using COVID-19 to not allow in-person visits, to not allow in-person inspections. And so the reason why we're having these conversations is because it's so important. And when whistleblowers come, forward and talk about the atrocities and the allegations against, of these abuses, it's because no one else is doing anything about it. And again, it's very simple to sit there and say you're breaking a contract because it people are being harmed, because you're breaching contract, because you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. It's very simple to clean up the jail. It's very simple to hire people who aren't racist, who aren't sexual predators. It's very simple to look at what's being done in Paris, what's being done in Atlanta, what's being done in these other jails to support people who have mental health issues, people who need support. And if one thing we've learned from the Capitol insurrection, to tie it back to the beginning of the show, we know when people are motivated to take care of incarcerated folks, they'll give them special treatment, they'll give them proper diets, they'll let them have phone calls and conversations, they'll move them to jail so they're closer to their family members and friends. And so we have to demand that same treatment for our local people here at the Allegheny County Jail.
Absolutely. Thank you, Miracle. And just, piggybacking off of one of the points you just made a minute ago, I've also heard Charles speak previously about how, about that issue that you just spoke about, where people would come in with, various prescriptions, whether it be for mental health or for medical health. And again, that administration that didn't have a medical background, for whatever reason, would refuse that specific medicine, would want to switch medicines. There would be issues getting them the right medicine. They would, fabricate records, according to Charles and others, that, they had received the medication when they in fact had not. So this is, just a really widespread systemic issue at the Allegheny County Jail right now, under the administration of Warden Harper and Deputy Warden Williams. So we're really grateful for the people who have been impacted by it and observed it firsthand, for their continued willingness to speak out about it and to fight and advocate for the people who are still experiencing it. In addition to Kimberly Andrews, really being really vocal about telling her own story and advocating for people that way. She's also been working with the Alliance for Police Accountability to get something on the ballot for this May that, we've talked about before, that would, effectively ban and largely restrict solitary confinement at the jail. And so, it's just, really important that we all continue to advocate for these things. As Brad said earlier, really all it would take to make a lot of these changes, at least to who is running the jails and, putting qualified people in those positions of warden and deputy warden, et cetera, would be just a phone call, and a couple signatures from County Executive Rich Fitzgerald. So, reach out to him, make noise publicly about, changes being made to the jail administration, or even just to pressuring Rich Fitzgerald to even just attending the jail oversight board meetings, and really having to confront those issues in person firsthand. But but yeah, I just want to say thank you one more time to all of our guests tonight who came on here and provided some really great accounts of all of those issues.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to thank Jacqueline Curran from the Abolitionist Law Center, Brad Korinsky from the Allegheny County Controller's Office, Charles Timbers, former nurse practitioner, and Kimberly Andrews, a survivor of the Allegheny County Jail. So now we're going to pass it over to Miracle to give us an update on everything that's going on and give us a rundown of programming for this week on the One Hood Network. Miracle, you're on mute.
I see that Jackie was saying that Kim is on the phone. I didn't know if he wanted to. Okay, yeah. So we'll have Kim on at a later date, but we'll put a lot of events going on in the chat. And so if you were moved by Kimberly's story, we put a link to her Cash App there so you could directly support her, as we are not we're not affiliated directly with her. And in addition, there's a bunch of events coming up, and we also signed the petition to stop solitary confinement in the jail here in Allegheny County. So if you are a registered voter here in Pittsburgh, you can sign that petition. I believe the deadline is in the next week or so. So you can go online and sign that petition and return that so we can get the solitary confinement removed as an option in the Allegheny County Jail. So if you are first tuning into us here at One Hood Power and One Hood Media, two separate organizations, we have a lot of events that we host weekly. So tomorrow, Tuesday at 2:00, we were having a conversation about relationships in the time of the Rona of COVID-19. So Tuesday at 2 p.m., join us back on One Hood's Facebook and YouTube as we discuss, love and relationships, since Pittsburgh was just, of course, ranked one of the number one cities for people who are single. But what does that mean when you're living in a city that has anti-Blackness embedded in its policies? On Wednesday at 6:00, we have This Week in White Supremacy, where we have a conversation. We're talking about all things white supremacy. Wednesday at 7:30, and the connection with the Holocaust Center of Pittsburgh, we have Athletes Against Anti-Semitism, and that is with Zach Banner, Josh Bell, and Alicia Clark. And that's at 7:30 with Farouk and Jasiri. That link is in the chat. Thursday at 12:00, we have On Tilt. That is a mental health mental health podcast where we talk about saving and protecting and supporting your mental health. So anytime you are feeling sad or overwhelmed, and you could always tune into On Tilt on Thursdays as we discuss mental health praxis. This Thursday as well, we have Ask a Black Doctor. We know a lot of y'all have questions, concerns, and comments about, the vaccine, about the COVID-19 rollout, about the pandemic, about flu season. So we are bringing back Ask a Black Doctor with our partners, and that's going to be Thursday at 7. In addition, Thursday in the afternoon, I'll be on a talk with Carlow University, talking about how you engage in anti-racist organizing. That link is also in the chat. And on Saturday, we have Stop the Station is doing a conference on policing and safety and accountability on Saturday from 11 to 1, I believe. And we here at One Hood are doing a teach-in with Halambo and Boom Concepts with Nino from Boston's PSL, who's also part of the Boston Teachers Union about what does it mean to engage in cooperative economics as artists and activists who are trying to find ways to build community outside of capitalist structures. Because we know with COVID-19, we're having to look at different systems and frameworks. And so we will wrap up our week of programming from 12 to 2 on Saturday with our partnership with Boom Concepts and Halambo. And that link is also in the chat. So I do thank you all for staying involved. And lastly, if you have not registered to vote here in Pennsylvania, we talk about people who are being appointed to the Oversight Review Board. We're talking about elected officials who have the ability to have oversight at the jail. We're talking about judges who sentence people to the jail, judges who can sentence people who can mandate investigations into the jail. And so we have a lot of judicial races coming up. So we're going to encourage people who believe in electoral politics and who believe in electoral democracy to register to vote. We understand that it's not the only way and the only tool that is available to people to organize and mobilize, but it is one tool, and we want to encourage people to use all the tools in the tool basket to dismantle these systems. So we do encourage you to register to vote. And with those announcements, I'll turn it back over to my colleague, Kahari.
Actually, real quick before we wrap up, I did just want to say one more thing that I forgot to mention earlier. I just also wanted to say thank you to, and sorry if I'm mispronouncing this at all, but Juliet Rill from Public Source, who seemingly wrote like 2/3 of the articles talking about these issues at Allegheny County Jail, and yeah, did a lot of great research and interviewing with a lot of our guests tonight. So I just want to say thank you to them for writing all those articles and taking the time to do that.
Absolutely, and she's a previous guest to the Power Hour when we were covering some stuff about just the pandemic and Allegheny County voting. So yeah, she's always on it. And we're getting also some other shout outs, Paula Ward from the Trib Live and Charlie Deach from the Pittsburgh Current as well. Yeah, so what a powerful episode today. A lot of powerful testimony, a lot of powerful information. Want to thank everyone who joined us. Want to thank Jacqueline Curran. Want to thank Brad Karinsky. Want to thank Chuck Timbers, and obviously want to thank Kimberly Andrews for her powerful testimony and sharing her just very, very powerful story. So that is this week's One Hood Power Hour. Thank everyone for joining us. On behalf of my colleagues Ryan White and Miracle Jones, I am Kahari Mosley. And until next Monday, stay safe. Definitely stay safe, stay dry, stay warm. But most importantly, stay engaged in the process. Thank you again for joining us. See you next week.